The Quiet Man in Texas. Out in the dusty plains of southern Texas, just 20 miles from the border, sat a modest farm surrounded by open land, mesquite trees, and rusted fences. The man who owned it was quiet, private, and rarely seen in town. Locals knew him only as Mr. Dane. With gray hair, a noticeable limp in his left leg, and the stoic presence of someone who'd seen too much, most people assumed he was just another aging veteran enjoying the last of his years in peace. But no one knew the truth. Jack Dane wasn't just a veteran. He was once the most feared commander in Delta Force, a man who led some of the most dangerous and classified missions in modern military history. His name didn't appear in books or on medals. It was buried in redacted files and whispered in Pentagon corridors. After retiring, he vanished into civilian life, leaving behind a trail of rumors and broken men who dared to cross him. On the other side of the border, a cartel known as Guerra Roja had been expanding their reach. Their leader, Alfredo Torres, had grown bold, claiming ranches and intimidating landowners in northern Mexico, and now he had his eyes on American territory. Word had spread that an old man owned a fertile stretch of land near the Rio Grande, alone and unprotected. Easy prey. One humid night, under a sky smeared with crimson clouds, 8 cartel enforcers crossed the border in black SUVs. They were armed with AKs, machetes, and overconfidence. Their mission was simple: scare the old man off, take the land, and use it as a new smuggling corridor. They cut the power first. Then they split into groups, some headed for the house, others to the barn, and a few remained outside to secure the perimeter. They laughed in the dark, their boots crunching dry soil, expecting an easy job. What they didn't know was that Jack had been watching them for days. He'd seen tire marks that didn't belong up on disturbed tracks near his fencing, and noticed the air had changed. Instincts honed over decades told him something was coming. He sat in his kitchen, sipping lukewarm coffee, waiting in the dark. When the first cartel soldier kicked open the door, he was met with silence. Then a flash of movement. Jack struck fast, a shadow with a blade, bringing the man down before he could make a sound. One by one, they fell. Jack moved through the night like a phantom. He used the barn's rafters for cover, the irrigation trenches to move undetected. In under 10 minutes, 6 men were dead, each killed with terrifying precision. The 7th tried to flee, limping toward the SUV with blood on his boots, but Jack's suppressed pistol dropped him to the ground with a single shot to the leg. The last one, wide-eyed and trembling, found himself duct-taped to a post inside the barn. Jack stood over him, calm and unblinking. "Who sent you?" he asked, voice like gravel and thunder. "Torres," the man stammered. "Alfredo Torres." He said the land was cartel territory now. Jack leaned in close. "Tell Torres the commander is still alive." The survivor was left near the border at dawn, barely breathing, a message carved across his chest. "You crossed the wrong line." Within hours, the story spread across cartel networks. 7 men dead, 1 sent back broken, all on American soil. Torres was enraged. He mobilized 30 men, trucks with mounted weapons, grenades, and radios, and ordered a full assault. They never made it. 10 miles from the border, U.S. agents intercepted the convoy after receiving an anonymous tip. Hidden inside one of the vehicles was a map, hand-drawn, marking Jack Dane's property with a red X. Suddenly, Jack's name surfaced on a dormant CIA file, and high-ranking officials in D.C. were forced to ask a question they hadn't considered in years. Back on the farm, Jack stood beneath the rising sun, scanning his fields. He knew this wasn't over. Not completely. But he also knew fear was a powerful weapon. He planted traps, buried motion sensors, and disguised cameras in birdhouses and fence posts. Then, in one corner of the land, he raised a simple flagpole. At the top, an old Delta Force patch waved in the Texas breeze. To the cartels, his farm would become legend, El Campo del Diablo, the Devil's Field. A place where even the most vicious enforcers refused to go. A place where death lived in the shape of an old man with quiet eyes and deadly hands. And so, Jack Dane continued tending his land, plowing fields by day, sleeping light by night, always listening, always ready. Because peace, he knew, is something you fight to keep. In a quiet Texas border town, tucked between a dusty gas station and an old barber shop, sat a small hardware store called Dane's Supply and Tools. It didn't look like much, just faded walls, a wooden sign, and an aging man sweeping the porch every morning. Most people walked past without a second glance. That man, Jack Dane, looked like any other war veteran, wrinkled face, slow limp, worn hands. Locals assumed he was a retired serviceman just keeping busy. Some knew he'd been military, but no one dared to ask questions. There was something in his eyes, something sharp, like a knife tucked under a coat. What they didn't know was that Jack Dane had once led the most elite Black Ops unit in Delta Force. He had trained assassins, defused bombs blindfolded, and ended wars before they began. When he retired, he chose a quiet life. No headlines, just nails, hammers, and coffee behind a dusty counter. But violence has a way of finding men like Jack Dane. Across the border, the Guerra Roja cartel had begun expanding their operations. Drug smuggling wasn't enough. They wanted control, territory, and intimidation. One of their men had stopped by Dane's shop one day asking to buy bulk fertilizer, too much to be legal. Jack refused without a word. The man left, fuming. 2 days later, a blacked-out SUV pulled into town. Then another. 8 cartel enforcers, armed and confident, stepped out in broad daylight and walked into Dane's shop while customers were inside. Out, one of them growled to the others. This is cartel business now. Everyone ran, everyone but Jack. He stood behind the counter, calm, almost bored, as one of them stepped forward and slapped a pistol down on the glass. You should have sold to us. Now we're taking your store. You can leave alive, or not at all. Jack didn't blink. He simply reached below the counter, pressed a hidden switch, and then, wouldn't do that if I were you. The lights flickered. The security shutters slammed down over the windows. The shop went silent. In the seconds of confusion, Jack moved. One man lunged forward, but Jack caught his wrist, snapped it sideways, and shoved the man into a shelf of chainsaws. Another reached for his gun, but a wrench flew through the air and hit him square in the jaw. The rest spread out, but they were trapped. They had walked into a battlefield disguised as a hardware store. Jack's shop was more than a store. It was a war zone in waiting. Behind every box, under every drawer, there were weapons, traps, sensors. The back wall flipped open to reveal a steel-plated armory. This wasn't a business. It was a fallback point he'd built years ago in case the world came knocking again. 5 minutes later, only one cartel man was still breathing. The others were unconscious, bleeding, or tied up in duct tape and rope. Jack crouched in front of the survivor, eyes cold as frost. "Who sent you?" he asked. "Torres," the man coughed. "Alfredo Torres. He said to take the shop, said the old man wouldn't be a problem." Jack leaned in closer, voice like distant thunder. "Tell Torres the commander is still here, and I'm still watching." That night, the survivor was dropped at the Mexican border, bound, bruised, and missing a finger. Stuffed in his pocket was a photo of Dane in uniform, years younger, standing beside a flag. On the back, written in pen, "Delta Force never retires." Within hours, rumors raced through cartel radio channels. They had attacked an American hardware store and lost. Torres was furious. He sent 20 men next time, armed to the teeth. They were intercepted halfway by Homeland Security, tipped off by an anonymous call. Inside one of their trucks was a crate marked Dane's Tools, filled with makeshift explosives. Someone had set them up, someone who knew how to turn hunters into prey. Back in Texas, Dane's shop stayed open. Customers came and went, but now they noticed the new flag by the door, black with a silver dagger stitched in the center. Those who knew whispered his name, Jack Dane. Those who didn't, they just called him the man you don't mess with. And the cartel? They never came back. Because no matter how strong you are, you don't raid the war god's shop.